Many people who have tried playing Sonic Shuffle didn't have a very good time with it due to how confusing it can be for newcomers. The game's tutorial doesn't explain all too much, and even though there are a lot of things that you will only learn by playing the game more, most people don't get too far in the game. It's kind of a situation similar to Sonic Riders, which is a very fun game and has tons of mechanics that don't really get explained unless you look for the tutorial that's tucked away in the extras menu. And that is exactly why I decided to make this video. I want more people to understand this game, and I'll try my best to explain how things work in it. I'll be mainly covering the versus mode of the game since that's the main multiplayer mode, and I will try to be as clear as possible. I may also skip out on some things that aren't as important just to keep it as a surprise. But with that, let's begin with the first thing I want to explain. So to start off, what even is the objective of the game? The objective is to get as many emblems as possible. These are given out at the end of a game and act as rewards for doing various things. If two players have the same number of emblems, the player with the most rings wins. As you may have guessed, rings are this game's main currency system as it is in most Sonic games, and collecting the most rings will give you an emblem. But in this game there are also collectibles called precious stones. They are the most important collectible of the game and each one will give you an emblem. In fact, the game doesn't end until all of the precious stones have been collected, and there can be up to 7 of them in one game. Which means the amount of time you'll spend on these games will mostly depend on how quickly you can get your hands on them. The characters you can choose from are all from the Sonic Adventure cast, each with their own abilities and advantages that can help you throughout the game. Even though most characters' abilities are triggered in a similar way, some require different conditions to be used, so make sure to read each character's description before choosing them. Now let's talk about one of the main differences in this game from other party games. Instead of dice, you move through the boards using cards. You can select any card you want and choose which direction to go to. The number on the card represents how many spaces you'll travel, and they can range anywhere from 1 to 6. Aside from the normal cards you see here, there are also 2 wild cards you can use. One of them is called the special card, which lets you do 3 things. You can roll a roulette and move up to 7 spaces if you time it properly, you can steal random cards from a rival, or exchange all of your cards with a player of your choice. The other wild card is the Eggman card, and in most situations this card will be really bad for you. It chooses one of 16 events, and if it's the last card available you'll be forced to pick it. Also keep in mind that only one player gets the Eggman card, the rest will always get a special card. Originally, Sonic Shuffle used a VMU or visual memory unit to display your cards and keep them hidden from other players. Thankfully, if you didn't have a VMU, you could still play the game normally. If a controller doesn't have one, it will display the cards in game. Although while playing with AI, this doesn't matter all too much. The AI in this game always knows where your cards are no matter the difficulty, and they're always gonna go after your best ones. The only way to counteract this behavior is to reshuffle your cards constantly. I also recommend doing this if you're playing without VMUs. And that's about everything you should know about the card system. But now let's talk about the spaces. First off, let's begin with the 2 spaces you'll see the most. The plus ring space, which gives you 3 rings, and the minus ring space, which also takes away 3. Every time you land on these, you start the combo multiplier, and the more you land on them, the more rings you get or the more you lose. You can multiply your combo up to 5 times until you land on a space that isn't a ring space, which means you can go from having multiple rings to none at all in seconds if you aren't careful. Now let's talk about the quest space. Every board has a quest, and sometimes they require different conditions to be activated. The number of players that can take on the quest is also dependent on the board, since some quests can only be done by one player while others can be done by all of them. It's also worth noting that completing a quest will award you with an extra emblem by the end of the game, so I would recommend completing them as fast as possible. The rest of the spaces are pretty straightforward. This is the event space, which will start either a minigame or a mini-event. This is the battle space, which will begin a fight with a monster. This space is the shop where you'll be able to buy all kinds of force jewels. These are the spring spaces, which will take you to predetermined locations on the board. There are also multiple shortcut spaces that only work for Tails, Knuckles, and Amy. And there are these spaces called the special jump spaces, which will take you to a random place on the board. Lastly, these are the precious stone spaces. If you see one of these around the board, it means a stone will spawn there. If you land on these, you will have to fight a monster, and if you win, you'll get the precious stone. Unlike the stars in Mario Party, the precious stones always spawn in the same order, aside from the last one, which will always spawn in the same place no matter the number of stones you're playing with. You could technically strategize around this, but every time one of them is collected, Eggman will punish whoever was furthest away from it. You can also steal precious stones in this game, but chances are you won't have an easy time doing it. After 2 stones have been collected, a portal will open up, and whoever gets there needs to pay 50 rings to get a chance at stealing one, and it's all decided by roulette in the end. Something else you can use on the boards are force jewels. These are the items of the game, and you can get them through minigames, mini-events, the Eggman card, shops, or fights. So you may have noticed that I mentioned battles and monsters a lot throughout this video, but I haven't actually explained what that is yet. As I said before, upon landing on a battle space, you will have to fight a monster using your cards. Once the battle starts, the game will display the monster's health with a card, and what you're supposed to do here is choose a card higher or equal to the monster's HP. Just like the yes cards roulette, you're supposed to time it to deal enough damage to the enemy and defeat it. If you don't deal enough damage, you'll lose ranks and lose the battle. If you don't have any rings, you will have to rest for 1 turn. In battles, you can use an S card to activate a special ability that most of the time will guarantee a win. Keep in mind that the effect will be different per character though, and if you want to be evil, you can trick someone else into using an Eggman card to make them lose the fight instantly. Winning against a monster will award you with a force jewel, and you'll get the chance to steal rings from a rival. If you defeated the monster normally, then you will be able to steal 10 rings, but if you landed a critical hit, you will be able to steal 20 instead. Of course, this is all chosen by roulette. You can also fight players, but these work pretty differently. To start a duel, you have to land on the same space as someone else. This will begin a minigame where you have to collect the highest or the lowest total of cards. Whoever wins is going to steal their opponent's rings, and the amount is dependent on the difference between their total and their opponent's total. The loser will also have to rest for 1 turn, so make sure you have a plan before dueling someone. Now let's move on to the final section of the video, the minigames. Landing on an event space can trigger a minigame, and the game will choose from either a 4-player game, a 2 vs 2, or a 1 vs 3 game. In minigames, how well you perform matters a lot, since the better your placement is, the better the rewards will be. But on the flip side, you can also lose rings in them either by getting hit by something or just doing really badly at the minigame. There are also a few other minigame types that serve different purposes. At the beginning of a match, you will have to play a play order minigame to decide the turn order. Accidents can also show up from time to time. These are board-specific minigames that can happen mostly by chance, but there is an exception to this. Once the last precious stone is collected, all the players will have to play through an accident, and whoever gets first place in this game will get an emblem by the end of the game. Event spaces can also trigger mini-events. More often than not, these require the player to make a choice, and then they can get rewarded depending on what they chose, but not all of them give good results. These can be challenges, guessing games, or just completely luck-based events, so use them at your own risk. And we have finally reached the end of the video. There is a lot more to Sonic Shuffle than what I mentioned, but regardless of that, I hope I at least inspired 1 or 2 people to give it a second chance or just convinced them to try it out for the first time. If you have any more questions about the game, make sure to leave them in the comments as I always read them, and make sure to check out the links I will put in the description since those have way more information than this video. But anyway, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.